Austin, I'd like to thank you for allowing me into your homes for this 21st edition of Season 2 of Esoteric Science Roundtable. Let's see, today the discussion will be based on the concept of preparatory work, excuse me, and I'll go into that a bit in a second. There are a few announcements that I would like to start with. And first of all, I would like to offer condolences to Jeff Contreras and his family for the recent passing of his father. And we would like to wish Jeff's father well on his journey, and keeping in mind also that death is not an end, it's just merely a transition. And that being the case, we would like to wish him condolences. And Chris, I may need you to come in here and actually turn this box down a bit for the time being. Let's see. Also, I want to mention that today, last week I had Dr. Yarli Lillemon on as a guest, and we were discussing the Mayan calendar. And so I want to make mention that today, according to the Mayan calendar, the day is the Blue Galactic Hand Day. And the qualities that would be associated with that particular day would be knowing, accomplishment, and healing. And so I feel like those are good qualities to base a show upon, especially in the respect of the healing, which is something I always try to emphasize in one way or another. And so, let's see, I would like to also encourage folks to take the opportunity to catch Therefore I Am every Tuesday at 10 on Channel 10. And let's see. Okay, I'd also like to mention the Austin Paratimes magazine. They're having a party coming up pretty soon here, actually this weekend, the 12th. And the Austin Paratimes, I don't have the most current edition, but these guys have been doing a lot of good work as far as making people aware of what's on Access, and as far as just bringing out a lot of information, alternative style information to the public. And so commend them for all their work, and I'd like to wish them a happy anniversary. And so if folks can make it out that way, they are having again, the first anniversary party. It's at a place called the Blue Genie Art Studio, I guess. And there is a website as well, which is 2012 Media. If you wanted to get any details on that, it's 2012 Media, 2012 Media. If you wanted to get any information on that, 2012media.com. And the address itself, if folks want to go ahead and jot the address itself down, the address of the party at the Blue Genie is 916 Springdale Road, Building 4, and that's here in Austin. Their zip over there, 78702. So to remind folks, the address for the Austin Paratimes party, if you're not going to be making it out to Tyler to see David Icke, you may as well check these guys out. 916 Springdale Road, that's Building 4 in Austin, 78702, the Blue Genie Arts Studio. And again, the website, if you want information on that, 2012media.com or 2012media.com. And again, I want to thank those guys for all their support as far as listing our shows and interviewing some of the hosts down here and what have you. They've been doing a lot of good work along those lines.
Put that in front of like where the phone thing is. The camera's actually on. If you want to put stuff in front of it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Also, let's see what we got. I want to also mention the meetings that are being held by the guest that I had last week, Dr. Lillemon. He hosts meetings based on the Mayan calendar every 12th day of what's called the wave spell. And that being the case, this upcoming 12th day is going to fall on Monday the 14th. And so Monday the 14th will be the crystal day, and he hosts these natural time meetings at Rudolf on South Congress. And I would like to thank the folks that did take the opportunity to go to the last meeting that I also had a chance to attend, and thanks people for coming down to check that out. So again, Monday the 14th would be the crystal day and the natural time meeting with Dr. Lillemon at Rudolf on South Congress. And not to forget also the meetings that myself and the fine folks at Therefore I Am, Jeff Contreras and his crew host, and that's the Metaphysical Philosophical meetings. And this particular month is going to fall on the 16th. And that also is a fortuitous occasion because it's going to be the full moon during Aries. And I want to reiterate that it's not the full moon in Aries, but the full moon during Aries. And that's a key point to keep in mind. Also, that will fall, according to the Mayan calendar, on a red magnetic Skywalker day. And so that also offers up its own qualities for the potential for a good meeting. And so also I would like to thank all the folks that did write to request the Mayan calendar information that's going to be heading out your way. I should be able to get those all mailed out within the next 5 days, let's say. So keep an eye out in your mail for those, and they'll be coming your way real soon. And I did, excuse me, I did receive some very nice email from some folks, and I do want to really thank you guys for your kind words and insight and I guess praise, I guess you could use that word for our show. And I do thank you very much for reviewing and offering those words. Okay, let's see. Now, again, keeping in mind that today's discussion is going to be based on the concept of preparatory work, I do want to, before I really get into that, address a comment that Jeff made on his show. If any of you guys caught the most recent edition of Therefore I Am this past Tuesday, Jeff did make a comment that I, in particular, he named as somebody that would rag on him for not putting much faith or much stock in channeled writings or channeled communications. And I have to say that I myself put very little or next to no stock in what you would term channeled communications. But as far as the idea of what a channel communication is may differ from one person's interpretation to the next. And so I want to clarify a little bit as far as what I feel would entail or comprise a channeled information in contradistinction to the handful of writers that I have a lot of faith in personally, that I base a lot of my individual philosophy, what have you, upon, and to kind of explain where they're coming from in the sense of where are they deriving their information, what is the source of the information for these individuals. And so to start, some of the individuals, and I think I'm going to have to maybe chat with Jeff a bit and see if he can help me out with some clarification on his beliefs, and potentially we might even do a show on it if he's willing to do that, and to kind of clear the air a bit without having to go back and forth to talk about this subject on our respective shows. And so to start, I want to mention Alice A. Bailey. She had a unique opportunity to work with an individual, one of the so-called masters, or one of the church invisible, as I like to speak of Christ and the church invisible quite often, and I'll speak about that a bit more into the show here, and that this body of perfected men that work intimately and directly with Christ actually are, again, working mostly behind the scenes. But in the instance of this particular writing that came out through a woman named Alice A. Bailey from basically 1919 to 1959, this was more of what I would term a contract or a contract labor situation, in that 30 years' work was agreed upon and a series of books were going to be authored. And the way that worked was there was a link set up between this particular individual. He's commonly known as the Tibetan, or Jwal Kul is another name for this individual. And he was able to link his consciousness up from the area that he was in to Alice Bailey here in the States, and was able to transmit information, and basically in a more symbolic way. So she would get the essence of the idea or the concept beamed, if you will. There's really not a really proper and adequate terms to describe the way this relationship took place. But nonetheless, this information was impressed upon her mind, and she, through her own qualities and characteristics and everything that made her who she was able to impress and interpret those impressions onto paper as a combination, if you will. There was a merging, because going through her, certainly some of her qualities and characteristics come through in the writing. And there are writings available that she wrote on her own, again, in distinction to the ones that were co-authored, if you will, by this master. And there is a distinct difference in the style of prose and what have you. So if you bother to check into these books, then you can see that there's definitely a difference in this, again, the style of writing And also to further explain this way this work took place, this impression, there would be an agreed upon time as well, and an agreed upon place in which this meeting could take place. And so she would write at given times, and ultimately a series of books came out. And again, I would look at this more as contract labor as opposed to a channeled situation. And I'll mention a channeled book in a second. Also, another person that got their information via these similar sorts of means is Helena Blavatsky. She wrote a book that's pretty well regarded, or pretty well reviled, depending on how you look at it, called The Secret Doctrine. It's a vast, comprehensive book. And also another book, Isis Unveiled, that came out before The Secret Doctrine. She was able to get impressed upon her mind certain concepts that she was also able to write down that were colored by, again, her personal experience and characteristics and qualities. But for the book Isis Unveiled, a lot of it had current medical information from medical journals of the time and current writings. And rather than go out and purchase and get access to these physical books, what would take place was that this individual, Joel Kuhl, the same individual that later was to work with Alice A. Bailey to impress these books upon her mind so that she could be the author, or amanuensis is another term that's used as far as a term meaning scribe, basically, in a way. That, again, the same relationship was set up. And so if Blavatsky needed a current medical journal, it would, if you will, appear before her, and that she would be able to read and take down the relevant quotes that she needed and be able to give credit to the proper authors and publications that needed to be quoted and footnoted. Excuse me. And so that was a situation as well that was a relationship, a working relationship in order to bring out some information. Now, Blavatsky, unlike Alice Bailey, was naturally clairvoyant from a very, very young age, and so she could see the dead people, if you will, and see even to higher realms outside of the realms that the freshly deceased find themselves. She could take her consciousness even higher than that, if you trust that that is indeed the case, and we pretty much have to take it on faith that that is the capacity that she had. And she wrote about her own ability, and from a young age, how she was able to, again, have a sense of and be able to tap into these spiritual realms or these inner plane worlds that, again, are tied to our world, but they're more refined, less dense, and our five senses don't readily recognize what's going on outside of our physical realm. And so some people have built in the capacity to perceive past these realms. And so she had this capacity. So that, in conjunction with her ability to merge the work that she was doing with the work of the hierarchy, so-called, or with Christ and the Church Invisible, that they were able to bring this information out at the right and proper time for the proper people that needed to have access to it. And I would say that those books are still very relevant in this day and age, even though it's been over 100 years since they've both been written and published. Another individual is Rudolf Steiner. He also, from a very early age, was clairvoyant, and he could tap into these higher realms. And so he could bring back knowledge from what would be termed the Akashic records. And that being the case, excuse me, it's tied in basically with the mental plane, or the aspect of mind, or the thinking thought apparatus, or the place where cause originates before it manifests and filters down into a physical plane effect that we can see demonstrated here on the earth. And so being able to tap into that causal plane and understand and be able to read these records, if you will, they could see past, present, and potential future in this Akashic record. And so they could read in and draw back information from past events in very great detail, so much so that they could even be aware of odors that were going on during this whatever scene they may be visiting, the thoughts of the individuals at the time, every nuance of what was going on in the past and also of the present. If you're able to, again, tap into these records, you're able to bring back. Now, again, future, we can see probability, potentiality, we can see the trends of things taking place, but you can't actually really predict the future accurately, because we have to factor in human free will and other things that factor in that are going to make the future as it's developing at all times. And so it's in the process, it's a work in process, and so to be able to accurately read it, it's with great difficulty that individuals are able to accurately read the future, and they're few and far between. And a psychic is not an example of a person that is able to accurately read the future. They're not able to tell you anything that's doesn't exist beyond the knowledge of the individuals in that room. And so that's going to be the limitation of what they're able to convey through their means, the mediumship means. And this is also not a means of mediumship also. This would be a means of, again, just a transmission of information and, again, a contract-style exchange. Although in the case of Rudolf Steiner, there was not a contract, although he allegedly did have his own dealings with these masters, so-called, or with Christ and the Church Invisible, and that's extremely likely. The last person I want to mention along these lines is Edgar Cayce, who also was able to tap into the so-called Akashic record. And the problem with this information, according to, and again, I might need some correcting on this, but the way I interpret Jeff's understanding is that these individuals aren't able to tap in without some sort of intermediary. They're not, my opinion is, though, that they're able to tap directly to these sources of information without any sort of real intermediary help. And so Edgar Cayce, rather than depending on some discarnate entity or some star being or whatever, that he was just able to get in tune with his own higher self, just an aspect of oneself that we all have that most of us are just not able to attune to and to bring information back through these means. And so I feel that he did have that capacity, and that through his birthright and through what he had been previously, this was a culmination of work that he was offering as a service to humanity. And many people do take comfort in the words of Edgar Cayce, and then many people conversely also think of it as kind of just hogwash. And so really you have to make up your own mind as to what you think. Or if you want to pool all of these guys together. And when I compare the writings of these individuals, some of them coming from similar backgrounds, like Bailey, Blavatsky, and Steiner, all coming from the so-called Theosophical Society and branching out from that originating body into their own activities. But then Edgar Cayce, somebody that was just a Christian, that was just raised in Virginia, that was, for all intents and purposes, just a simple man. He didn't have any kind of any kind of mystery school or any kind of sacred teachings that he was making himself, that he was availing himself of. He was just, again, just a very, what I would call a hardcore Christian, just somebody that just so firmly believes in God and the mysteries of Christ and all of these things. They're so firmly impacted in this person that they feel compelled to serve. Now, this also bringing this aspect of Christ, all of these individuals also emphasized Christ. And that being the case, that is a point of contention definitely for Jeff, because Jeff does not believe that there was an actual man, Jesus, and that there was a merger with Christ in the same sense that I feel that took place. And so automatically, if Christ is mentioned by these individuals, according to what I understand, Jeff's opinion would be that they're already tainted with this pre-Christian disposition, so everything coming out of their mouths is already going to be tainted by this emotional predisposition or mental predisposition towards believing in Christ, believing in Jesus and Christ, or however you want to term the merging of those two individuals and the work that they did together for 3 years on the physical plane. So that being the case, those are some of the ideas that I have on that concept. Also, the need that Jeff speaks of to be able to verify and to authenticate these writings. And I'm not really familiar with the tests or methods that he would feel comfortable with in order to validate this as truth in his own life, in his own heart, in his own mind. For me personally, I just basically, for my validity test, I just trust my own intuition. That's really all I can do. I don't have a fancy formula. I'm not really personally into divination and penduluming and things like that. No disrespect for anybody that is. But that does not really hold much of a swear or an appeal to me ultimately. And I just feel that intuitively that I have to just trust my own intuition on these things and have faith in these institutions and have faith that these people are who they say they are, and that they've experienced what they say they have experienced. And again, you have to just kind of take it on faith, unless you're able to ultimately build into yourself the same capacities that they did, in which case you would be able to corroborate and validate through your own consciousness exactly what they say that they have been able to achieve and ascertain. If that's the case, then we would be able to say, again, by our own understanding, yes or no, this took place according to what these individuals say. And I think that as individuals do make progress along these lines, and this is part of what I'm discussing about preparatory work, as I'm going to start to get into that a bit more here, that we're going to have an opportunity through preparatory work to bring forth a lot of these ideas and to help build on a lot of this work that had been started by a lot of these other messengers and servants to humanity. Now, there is an example I would like to bring up of a book that was channeled, and it's a book called A Dweller on Two Planets, and it came out in the late 1800s. It was written, well, it was channeled by a guy who was 18 years old, Frederick Spencer Oliver. At age 18, he was able to get linked up, if you will, with this individual called Philos the Tibetan. Now, not to confuse Philos the Tibetan with the Tibetan Joel Kuhl, who was the writer that, or the master rather, that worked with Alice Bailey. Two separate personages, two separate individualities, and they come from two separate traditions or schools, if you want to use that term. Supposedly, Philos the Tibetan that worked with Frederick Spencer Oliver came from a Lemurian fellowship, whereas the Tibetan Joel Kuhl is affiliated with a Himalayan brotherhood. And that Himalayan brotherhood is also referred to as Christ and the Church Invisible. But nonetheless, this is a shared work. There's not any kind of any adversarial work going on here. This is all shared work. But nonetheless, this 18-year-old kid or young man was able to draw down this book, and this book takes place originally in Atlantis, and it goes through many incarnations of this particular individual as he's trying to find his way along the path of return to divinity. And it's a really great book, but it also does acknowledge Jesus Christ. And so, much channeled information does. And so it's hard to get past that taint of individual authors that are able to bring forth information as to whether or not, their personal belief is tainting the information, or whether their access to the particular truths are based on what actually is. And might well be that there is, in fact, a Jesus and a Christ. And that's my firm belief and my firm contention. And also, excuse me, in the idea of preparatory work, I want to get into that somewhat as well in the second half of the show and discuss what exactly would be preparatory work, and how do we make ourselves part of this preparatory work if we so choose. Basically, preparatory work I would describe as working with energy and force, or working with cycles, seasons, rhythm, all of these things that we see, these recurring patterns that, again, they make cycles, they make seasons, they come again and again and again and again. And once we understand the qualities available at different times of the year, we can make optimum use of these energies at any given time. And that being the case, what we have available for us as far as using these cycles is an opportunity to work with energy during the year that would culminate basically during this time of year. And this would be what would be called the higher interlude, as opposed to the end of the year, which is termed the lower interlude. And what it basically means is, and it also ties in very intimately with the cycle of the moon, going from the new moon to the full moon. And that whole process of when the new moon is out, you don't see the moon. The moon is basically non-existent. And then as it begins to wax and grow, then ultimately we get to see the waxing of the moon, and the moon becomes full, and it fills out. And during that cycle, during that time, that 28-day time, roughly speaking, we can take advantage of that energy. And just in the same sense, you can kind of use the analogy of thought, of bringing forward a thought into fruition, into some action. We have to think of something before we can do something. And so if we can pattern our thoughts and our planning with these cycles, we can make the optimum use of energy. And it's almost just like a farmer making use of the sunlight and making use of the good soil and taking advantage of his conditions in his area to bring forth the best crop that he possibly can. We also are doing this at all times in our daily work, whether that's through our jobs, careers, in our family relationships, personal relationships with children, in our educational endeavors for ourselves and others, through all kind of fellowship, through church, community, various groups and organizations, and we find ourselves branching out in this respect. But if we can ultimately use whatever endeavors, whatever planning, in conjunction with cycles and energy, we can get the best results possible to come forward. Excuse me. It's really up to us as to how we're going to be able to best make use of this energy. Now, first of all, it really is incumbent upon us, or necessary as a very basic building block to start, is to get our own house in order, to get ourselves squared away, and to do the work of clearing out the unnecessary emotions and desires and things like that, and getting in a spot where the head is overruling the heart. And so that being the case, if the head aspect or the mind aspect is a controlling aspect, then all of our personal feelings about things can be kind of pushed aside, and we don't have to worry so much about those things coming up, welling up to the surface to distract, color, or taint whatever we might be planning. And so really it has to do with detaching oneself from our own emotions in many respects, and concentrating on the work at hand, and being cognizant and aware of the energy available that we can take advantage of to move forward. And so doing things in a cyclic or rhythmic way would be very useful for us, and this is going to be an example of future work. I think we're going to see this come to fruition as more of this group thinking that's related to the so-called Aquarian Age becomes available for us. And so that being the case, the more we make ourselves aware of the seasons that are available, and in particular the seasons that I want to describe, again, relating to the full moon cycle. That is, each full moon cycle is roughly a 28-day cycle, and this again ties in intimately with the Mayan calendar, being a 13-month, 28-day calendar. So there are 13 months, 28 days each, and that makes 364 days. So leaving one extra day, because most realize that there are 365 days that it takes for our planet to traverse around the sun. It makes a year. And so the 364 days, the even number of that, leaves the extra day out, and that is called a day out of time. And I'll probably speak about that more in future shows, especially if I have when I have Yarli back on as a guest, to be able to speak more about the Mayan calendar in detail. But nonetheless, that time that it takes, that whole 364-day cycle, based on the 13 months of the moon, once we become familiar with how that energy flows, we can start to do our planning from the new moon and carry through the full moon. And this, we can see the culmination. We can see our work coming into fruition and becoming active as the full moon fills. And so we can gauge, once we get into these cycles, how things are coming to fruition. We can watch, just like we watch the plants and flowers grow. We can see over this time span just exactly what's going on, how it's growing, and we can at all turns add our own qualities and our own characteristics to bring forth the best. It's kind of just like, watering, speaking to the plants, whatever needs to be done in order to bring forth the best possible results. And this all ties in. It all ties into understanding the planning, and again using cycles for our benefit. Now, that being the case, the upcoming next three full moons rather, excuse me, are going to offer for us an opportunity to take advantage and to work intimately with Christ and the Church Invisible. Now, many people during the Easter holiday, which this full moon indicates the Easter holiday upcoming, and that is the first of the high culminations of spiritual festivals that so many millions around the world recognize and practice in one way or another. And so that being the case, there are a lot of people that are paying attention to this full moon cycle, and that on or around this particular full moon in April, they're going to be pooling together their energies and concentrating on the risen Christ. And that is very much the emphasis of the Easter holiday, is concentrating on the risen Christ. Not reverting back to Christ crucified on the cross and the death aspect. That has been already covered. Easter is a time for rising and for lifting up and for new life and rebirth and regrowth. And that is why during this time, during spring, it's ties right in. It's just so nice that it fits in so adequately like that. And it's obviously it's not for no reason that is the case. There's a lot of reasoning behind why, obviously, the Festival of the Risen Christ would coincide with the rising of all the spring flowers and all of this abundancy of life that we see coming forth, and all of the green and all the Easter lilies and all the spring flowers that we are familiar with. It all coincides with this event. And so the individuals are taking advantage of this full moon time. Many, again, millions around the world that collectively pool their energy. Now, we don't have to be in the same locality, although that is helpful to be in numbers together, saying an oath, an affirmation, a prayer, an invocation, a meditation. All of these things factor in to help pool the energy in the proper way. And so many groups get together for that purpose. And now the other upcoming festival after Easter would be Vesak, or the Festival of Buddha. And then following that, the June full moon would be the Festival of Christ. Also, some also term that World Invocation Day or World Goodwill. But I choose to term it primarily the Festival of Christ. And that's the key component to all of these, actually, is Christ. Now, obviously, Vesak is the Festival of Buddha, but what is really emphasized is the merging of energy between Buddha and Christ, and how that there was a culmination of work. Buddha came to instill the quality of wisdom, and Christ came to instill the quality of love. Those two merged together in the concept of love, wisdom, and so that shared work, that amalgamation, or that passing of the baton from one to the next is demonstrated and expressed, vivified, and celebrated during this Vesak festival, or the Festival of the Buddha. And so that ceremonial aspect in itself is participated upon. And so we have an opportunity, if we so choose, to pool our energies. And I have a lot of faith and confidence that there are a lot of people out in the viewing audience that have the quality and the capacity that would be needed to really add and fill out this work, and that could really do a beneficial service by adding their energies to this group work that's already going on around the world. And so that's what I would like to bring up, and to ask and to impose upon some individuals that would be willing next week on the 17th to take advantage of the opportunity. It would be the day after the full moon, and this would be an Easter meditation that I would like to do here at Access. And so I would like to just basically plop down right here on the floor and use a meditation routine, an already written out meditation that emphasizes in particular the qualities that are available at this time, and to emphasize the risen Christ. And again, keeping in mind that I think there are a lot of people out there, I have full confidence there are a lot of people out there that can add a lot of energy to this, and to make this a really successful and beneficial endeavor. Again, pooling their energies with the greater energies, and instead of just offering and professing a belief in Jesus, professing a belief in Christ, to actually work to open up the channel. And again, using the term channel just in the sense of like channels on a television, tuning in a particular channel on a television, as opposed to the concept of channeling as I was speaking of earlier. But we have this opportunity to really participate actively with this work in a real living way, a real vital way. And some people may say that sounds a bit fanciful and that doesn't seem to make much sense, and how can we possibly do anything just by saying a little meditation and thinking some particular thoughts? But when we understand physics, that energy follows thought, and when you get a lot of thought, and you get thought upon thought upon thought, building and building and building, that energy pooled together has direction and focus because of our focused wills, that the real work can consummate from that endeavor. And that's something I really want to emphasize. We must have faith that our planning and our work along these cycles will have the desired result. And it's entirely up to us as to what qualities we want to bring forth, what the intensity level, what the mental focus that we want to bring to the table would be. And so it's up to each person as to what they want to do along these lines, as far as considering in your own time, in your own heart and mind, during this Easter celebration, just being reflectful and being contemplative. If you don't choose to participate in the meditation next week that I'm going to be doing here live, maybe just some way or another in your own heart and your own mind, you can contemplate what Easter means to you, what Christ means to you, what the concept of the risen Christ means as well. That's something that I really want to, again, emphasize as far as keeping in mind the risen Christ, and then why that festival is so important. And again, using this energy, this higher interlude that's available, and also to speak a bit about the chain of command, if you will, or not really the chain of command so much, but the chain of commission and communication that works when we sit together and pool and direct our energy in this respect. Our energy melds and moves together with the energy of Christ and the Church Invisible, and that it in turn moves forward to the will of God, the will aspect, or the Father in heaven aspect. And so a line of communication is set up, a magnetic current, if you will, is set up, and it's also like a vortex or a center of energy that's culminating around this meditation. And also another thing too, it's going to depend also on each individual person's perception of what is Christ. Is Christ to you a Christ consciousness where every single person just has a welling of goodwill and love in their hearts, and they just all of a sudden are overcome with the desire and the aspirations to be and do good and to be a follower after Christ? Perhaps that is what Christ consciousness or the return of Christ would mean to you. Some actually are looking for a physical return. I do think it has to be both. I think we have to have the culmination of a Christ consciousness to lay the firm foundation for any real return of Christ and the Church Invisible, and that we would have first coming out among the sons of men actively working these so-called masters, or Christ and the Church Invisible, that they would move in to active work on the physical plane in the various areas, whether that be governmental, educational, religious, the monetary system, what have you, that they'll find their ways into real active work. And then there are also those that already have a determination or already have a faith or belief that Christ has already made his way back to the physical plane, and they have footage and pictures to substantiate their claims that he already has made his way back. And so whether you choose to believe that, whether you choose that he's yet to make his way back, or whether you choose to believe that this whole Christ was just an energy rather than a being, rather than a person, or maybe not at all. Maybe you have a non-belief and you don't believe that any of this is true. So that's entirely up to you, certainly. But I do feel that there are those out there that have the proper aspiration, the proper qualities and convictions and motivations, and just the light available to bring to this meditation some constructive, positive energy that can do a lot of good ultimately, if we have that faith and confidence that we can, through something as simple as a meditation, really bring a lot of energy, pool energy together, pool our resources together, and make this sort of expression to move forward. We can actually work in this way. And this preparatory style work that I'm describing is a real laying down of a foundation. It's a real groundwork, laying of a foundation for future opportunity. And as so much has been done previously, we can further culminate the work. We can further add on what's been done with our own efforts. And we can make it how we choose to make it. I know that may also sound a bit New Agey, somewhat strange and foreign to people, but as we think and qualify what is taking place and plan, if we put our best foot forward, we're going to get the best results. It's as simple as that. And so it's really on us, it falls on us to be the best that we can at all times in all of our areas of endeavor, so that we can bring forth the culmination of the best possible future society, the best qualities emphasized, the good, the true, and the beautiful in all aspects of human endeavor, that if we can just consider those qualities, and again, learn to work, and again, this has to come from a point of sacrifice too. There has to be some sacrifice and concessions made in order to make oneself the proper sort of vessel, in order to be, again, the best possible communicator or mediator for this energy and this work. And it's really up to us as to how we choose to live our lives, think our thoughts, and feel the feelings that we do to make ourselves at any given time part of the problem or part of the solution. It's really kind of up to us as to how we choose to unfold our own evolutionary selves and our own consciousness in conjunction with the larger picture. So I am going to go and grab a few calls here and see what's going on. And Chris, I may need you to turn up the box, but let's see what's going on here. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Good.
I see that you're talking about preparatory work. Obviously, that's a spiritual thing to do. I was wondering if you would relate that to maybe somewhere around self-mastery in some way. Maybe when you talked about let the mind control the heart and feelings, would you consider that as self-mastery, just like Jesus the Christ did?
Yes, very much so. The whole, what we find in the gospel narratives is a whole example for us to follow as far as from birth to baptism to transfiguration to the renunciation or the death onto the transfiguration or the resurrection, but the resurrection rather, that five-step, if you will, culmination of work. We have that example to follow of how we get our own house in order. And it basically starts with us kind of deciding what's important to us. That's the very first step, and getting our own house in order. And so once we can start to do that, we can start to see if things of the lower nature are more appealing to us or things of the higher nature. And our desires, if we really have an honest approach towards this, our desires are going to start changing and transmuting, just like the alchemists back in the old days. They wanted to turn lead into gold. That example we also have. We change our desire into what's called aspiration. And so we make a low feeling into a higher spiritual feeling. And the way that we do that basically is just by starting by thinking, prayer, contemplation, meditation, all of these ways that we try to get in touch, if you will, with ourselves and with God.
Kind of like spiritual alchemy.
Yes, very much so. And so that builds onto itself. And as we clean and clear out what's not needed and necessary, and we move forward and we build into ourselves the good qualities, again, using the examples like of Christ through Jesus, or many of the other previous examples of previous religion offer similar examples for us to follow if we choose to do that. And we can, again, clear out the unnecessary. And basically, it's just the best thing I can really recommend is going forward with the intention to have a life of service, to do every day a little something to help your fellow man, help alleviate the suffering of other people.
Right.
But certainly you have to get your own house in order to be capable of doing that sort of thing. You need to have yourself prepared and ready, because if you know, obviously it's just that obvious. You have to have yourself together before you can start helping others. But once you make that firm decision, then you can do a little something each day. Whatever your skills, qualities are, you can bring a little something each day to the helping of others. Or you can have a bigger project, like I was talking about earlier, and follow some sort of cycle or rhythm and build and build and build to have some kind of a big plan. You know, and you build each day, and you each day add a little something to the overall. It's like building a house. You don't do it in one day. You lay the foundation, and then you lay, you know, all the other things on top of that. Then the electricity comes in, and on and on and on.
Right.
But it's just like that. It's just like building on little by little. So preparatory work is basically building yourself and then helping. Once you see there's a plan, a spiritual plan out there, that you can see your part in that plan and you can do your role. And it has to do with trusting your intuition, trusting yourself. There's also an old saying, man, know thyself. If you really question yourself and, you know, say, why do I do that? Why am I that way? Why do I act this way in this certain situations?
Yeah.
You know, all those kind of things, and start to question yourself. Then you can see what you need to do to get your own house in order. And you can kick those things over that aren't serving you anymore, and you can be a real servant of humanity if you so choose. And I do thank you for taking the time to call. Is there anything else you care to add?
Yeah, another quick question. I heard you talking about the Ascended Master dual cool. I was wondering what brought that Ascended Master topic or whatever it is that you were discussing up. Because just like I know, I'm into metaphysics myself, and I know just like Master dual cool, there's many other Ascended Masters. I was just curious, why was it that you were talking about just that specific Ascended Master?
Well, I did speak of Jesus as well, and he would be another
master
also.
Right, just like Saint Germain, and there's many other
There
ascended
are
masters.
many, that is true, but in this particular work, as far as I was speaking about some of the information that came out into the public specifically through that particular master.
Okay.
And certainly other individuals have written books with the help of these great individuals. It just, you have to have some faith that that's the case, because not everybody deals with these masters, if you will, on a daily basis, or
Right,
at least they're not aware of it in a real way.
Not yet,
And-
anyway.
I'm sorry?
Not yet, anyway.
Right, and so they have to take it on faith that these individuals exist, and take it on faith that through an example like we find in the gospel narratives, that we too can make ourselves perfect according to the way that these individuals did, and lose the desire for the earth plane, but yet not lose our aspiration for service to humanity.
Right. And could I get that address that you were showing on the screen for that metaphysical,
Yeah,
philosophical?
Opal Divines. It's the third Wednesday of every month that myself and Jeff Contreras host these meetings. And Chris, if you wouldn't mind putting that graphic back up. There we go. Thanks a lot.
All right.
This particular month, it's the 16th, and we always meet at the upstairs part of Opal Divines. It's always free, and just sit down and have a chat and enjoy yourself. If you want to order a drink, order some food, you're more than welcome to, and we just hang out for several hours and just talk about whatever. So you're more than welcome.
All right. Thank you much.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Go ahead and grab another call here. Hello, caller.
Hello?
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Corey, what's going on, man?
Is this Shag?
Yeah, this is Shag.
What's
Say,
up,
I just want to announce to anybody that's watching on air that I have a couple of David Icke tickets.
Okay, I don't know
couple
how much
extra
we can do
ones.
with that. You know what I mean? I think that might border on some of the no-nos.
Well, I mean, how else am I going to,
Bring your tickets to the meeting and talk to people about that at the meeting. Oh, wait,
No,
that's too
dude,
late.
that's not
too
going to
late.
do
My
me
bad,
any
my
damn
bad.
good, man.
Yeah, you're right. My bad. Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's about as much as I think I could talk
Oh,
about.
man, don't do that to me, dude. I mean, what the hell would you
buddy.
do?
Hey, you're infringing on some things by doing that. You realize that. Is there anything else you care to add as far as the topic today?
Well, I don't know. I hadn't been watching. What's the topic?
The topic is
Oh,
Shaggy needs
come
to
on.
watch the show more often. Don't do that, Shaggy. That's not good, buddy. There's not much I can do for you as far as those tickets are concerned. I can't help you out there, man. You know better. Okay, now to consider again some other things as far as what we can do. Basically, my intention next week is to sit down here and show on the screen basically the different stanzas of a particular meditation, and to walk through that and actually do the meditation here on air. And I don't know how common that is to actually do something like this. And to actually encourage everybody out there that's interested to they'll be able to read along with the graphic and add their own energies and just kind of participate along at home if you so choose. And I'll have an opportunity to speak to people about that at the metaphysical meeting as well. And I'll actually have some copies of the particular meditation that I'm going to be using that I can pass out, so that you can have your own copy in hand, as well as if you want to follow along on the screen. And that will be about half of the show, and then we'll go ahead and take calls as well. But as far as participating in the meditation, those of you that are going to be watching next week, if you'll just go ahead and start kind of keeping in mind, and also planning now as far as adding and consolidating the energy and letting that energy consummate and consolidate and congeal, so that we can put the best foot forward. The more planning and the more thinking about these things we do, the better off it is for us. And so if we start thinking about these things now, we can again start putting the best foot forward. Let me go ahead and grab another call quickly. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Hello? You're there, go ahead. Okay, let me go ahead and grab another call. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Well, if anybody else wants to go ahead and try to give a call, looks like we've got some clear lines there. If anybody that actually wants to speak on air. Okay, again, we're going to be having the metaphysical meetings. Do me a favor, hit that clock. Just hit the top of the clock. Okay, that's cool, that's cool. Having a little bit of a glitch here with a clock. It's reading some Klingon numbers up here. But anyway, it looks like we've got a few minutes left to go ahead and take a few more calls. So let me grab a few more calls here. Hello, caller, go ahead. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello.
Go ahead. You're on
Yes,
the air.
hello. You mentioned that people have to get their act together before that they can serve, and I just wanted to point out that I've read, and it's been my understanding that that's a common New Age belief. There's a lot of people that are real in love with themselves, and they're doing all these elaborate, expensive things for themselves and to get themselves together, and that they're really wasting their time, that they are making an excuse, and that they, by all means, are certainly capable, even though they're not perfect yet, to help the human family.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I think I have an example of somebody that with very little means and very little resources have been able to get a little bit of a message out there and do some positive things. And I will tell anybody, you don't need much money. You don't have to concentrate on yourself that much. Just a little meditation and just getting your heart in the right place. If you have the will to want to help people, that will carry you a long way, and that will take care of the little stuff. And as far as people spending a lot of time and money on, where they go to some kind of healthcare facility or they're consulting different experts on different things, that can be helpful. But again, you're very right about that. If you get caught up in your own self and lose sight of the bigger picture, I think everything you should do to help yourself, this is just my belief, should be to help others. If you're going to do something to help build yourself, it should be with the intent, with the motive of helping others ultimately. I do thank you for bringing up that point. Is there anything else you care to add?
Oh, that's it.
Okay, thanks a lot. That's a very solid point. Thank you so much. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Hello? Caller, go ahead. You're on the air if you're ready to speak. Hello? Are you there?
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Not too much.
Yeah, I had a comment about the topic the other guy was just talking about. Man, that dude don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah, we can't be having any cursing on the air. We're going to have to let you go, brother. I prefer that people don't use profanity on the air. If it's just there's no place for that. There might be some younger people watching and what have you, and so I'd rather not go that route. Thank you for watching nonetheless. Okay, we do have a few more minutes left, so let me go ahead and explain a few more things as well. Another thing, too, as far as a larger cycle that's really coming into play, and then I'll probably have to discuss a bit more in the future, is the concept of the 7 ages that we go through in a particular larger cycle, in that we found ourselves in the Indian cycle, which is the Asian, India, Burma, that area, and then the Persian society, our culture, came into being as a second society, and then the third would be the Egyptian, the Babylonian, what have you. Then the fourth would be the Greco-Roman, and the fifth, our current age, and these are all part of the Aryan race. All 5 of these and the culminating 7 are part of the Aryan race, the 7 sub-races of the Aryan race. But our fifth is the Anglo-Saxon dominated aspect of the Aryan race. And that being the case, we have opportunity to take advantage. So if we look at the 7, and we see that if we line them up, 1 would meet with the 7, the 2 would meet with the 6, the 3 would meet with the 5, and you have the 4 down at the bottom all by itself. And so you can draw a line from the 3rd to the 5th and see that, for instance, our Anglo-Saxon dominated culture has relations to the Egyptian, the Hebrew, and the Chaldean, and all that. And so you can draw the direct line across and see the ties in that respect. And so as we're culminating and starting into the beginnings of the 6th subrace, which won't be an ethnic type so much, but it'll be more of a way of thinking, that you'll see our 6th subrace coming into being and accenting and revisiting the Persian. And that is there's definitely a reason for that too. There's a cyclic reason for that too, on a larger turn of the spiral, as far as a higher culmination of evolution, consciousness, spirituality, that will be able to take place through a revisiting or a revitalization of this old Persian impulse and age. And so all of what's going on right now in Iraq and the Middle East, and Babylon and Iraq being basically ancient Persia for all intents and purposes, that we see that tie between the upcoming age that we're going to be finding ourselves part of and the culmination of new discoveries related to the Persian age. We're going to see more concentration, more fascination with that age, just in the same sense that the Anglo-Saxons had a love affair with the Egyptian times, the Egyptian histories, and found a lot of fascination in that age and era. And so that being the case, we're going to see that revisited, and that our, again, upcoming age of men, this Aquarian age of men, that's going to be, again, more of a group way of thinking, more of a group thinking, more of a synthetic approach than, again, an ethnic type that we had in the previous demonstrations for our Aryan age. And the culmination of the Aryan 7 cycles will find its way ultimately with a revisitation of the old Indian age. And so we'll find ultimately when that cycle is consummated that we'll tie in with the Indian age, and we'll revisit a lot of the themes from the old Indian days. Not the American Indian West, obviously, but again, the Asian Indians, the Hindustani people. And that being the case, we can see how the patterns will play out for the far future yet to come for us. But again, the near term is going to emphasize, again, a revisiting of the Persian culture, and that's very important to keep in mind because it's going to tie into a lot of the activity and a lot of the further unfolding of this so-called New World Order based with that region. And there's going to be, I mean, there's a lot of people in the area that are predominantly Islamic and what have you, that we're going to have to find some common ground with for this new dispensation of information and this golden age, this Aquarian age, to truly take place. We can't leave these people behind, and I know there are a lot of varying, there's a lot of varying ideas as to what should or shouldn't take place in that region, and who should and who shouldn't make the determination. Ultimately, I think it should fall with the peoples of those countries, the sovereign countries, and it should ultimately follow the decisions of those people, and not through democracy, but through some means, hopefully based on some spiritual understanding. That would be my ultimate wish, my ultimate aspiration for all those individuals. And so hopefully that is the case, that this understanding and this bringing in of this re-emphasizing of the Persian age will be ultimately and primarily beneficial for us. It will be ultimately, but for us to qualify and bring it in as best we can. We can reel it in and, again, putting the best foot forward as much as possible and try to build bridges instead of looking for separate, separate ways of thinking. We can come together on common ground, and there's a lot of that, more so than differences. So please keep in mind the Metaphysical Philosophical Meeting. Don't forget to check out Jeff Contreras, Therefore I Am, every Tuesday at 10 on Channel 10. Some of the other awareness shows on, don't forget those guys. Also the Crystal, the Natural Time meeting, which is going to be upcoming on the next Monday, which is the 14th. The 14th would be the next Crystal meeting day. I'd like to thank my producer, Chris, for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the opportunity to view. And we ourselves will be back again next Thursday at 9 on Channel 10. And I would like to, again, remind folks I'm going to be doing a meditation for the Easter full moon. So thanks, Austin. Have a nice evening. Take care.